Hey everybody, welcome back for another fun week of Atlas Duo short stories.
Hi.
Get out. I'm Kristen.
I'm leaving.
Yeah, you will be. So today we are exiting. Michelle, thank you for your time. We appreciated it.
Get a medal for my service, I hope.
You will not. Yeah, we had a lot of fun last week with our stories. So we're gonna hopefully have some more fun this week. Do you want to give a refresher on what our prompts were before?
For this week or
last week?
Oh, last week we had a person who can fix anything using yarn, but they lose a piece of themselves every time. And we also had a group of people go camping and they're hunted by Bigfoot.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
I love the idea of being hunted by because you can imagine what Bigfoot meat would taste like. Hunt it, eat it. Delicious.
You're being hunted by Bigfoot.
I know, but who says
you
the
hunted
can't be the hunter? That's the thing that they say sometimes, isn't it? It is.
When you're sleeping, yeah.
So we did surprise prompts this week, and Michelle's going to be going ahead and reading first. So you want to go ahead and read what prompt it was that I have created for myself for you to read?
Yeah. So
right.
the prompt that you wrote for you was: an elf meets a siren in isolation that has been unable to communicate with the world for centuries. So, the title of this story is One Last Song. I am a traveler. I venture through the world looking for the most beautiful things to collect and bring back to my home. This line of work can be very tiring, but for someone of my caliber, it is merely a chore. For I am an elf, which makes me capable of doing things that no others can do. For one, we live extremely long, while feeble humans can last barely a century. Don't get me started on those stupid dwarves with their hammers and clanking all day. They are as dim as the stones they spend mining all day long. The only other beings that can even try to compare to us are any of the Fae, as we are all linked and related in a way. We harness the best and most powerful magic. We all live for extended periods of time. Our beauty has no comparison, and most importantly, our intelligence is unmatched. Although we do think highly of ourselves, it is just rightfully so, as we are very generous towards the realms. We may find humans to be feeble and unintelligent, but it is exactly for those cute reasons that we help them out so much. Us elves are at peace with all of the realms due to our ability to barter with the lessers. Anything that they may require is more than easily obtainable for us, or we already have it and can provide it to them for a small exchange. On my most recent expedition, I would be traveling across the sea looking for an ancient relic of the Mer people. There was a special treasure hidden in the Crystal Isles that had the power to bring anyone to their knees in worship. The treasure was said to have driven people mad just at the glance, and we wanted to find out just how true these rumors are. I prefer to work alone, as I've found people tend to slow me down. If it isn't their second guessing that prevents us from making the correct decision immediately, it's their weakness that has us pause for them to catch their breath. Even within the elven community, we had tiers to everything. Myself being a high elf meant that I am, well, above the rest. We have wood elves that like to frolic in the forests and stay close to our animal companions. We have elves that prefer different elements like hot, fiery places or cold, icy places. We also have dark elves that are basically always lurking in the shadows protecting our kind or taking out an enemy without anyone noticing. Entering the Crystal Isles, you could see why it was named such. The water sparkled and glistened so beautifully, and you could see a rare type of coral that shimmered like gemstones. The fish swimming alongside the boat were an array of wonderful colors and seemed to move so effortlessly with such elegance. It did feel very strange that this place did not have more visitors, considering how relaxed I felt being there. But that may mean that the rumors were true. Although we elves are powerful, we are not overly cocky and underestimate every opponent. Especially with the rumors circulating this place, I had prepared a lot of safety measures. By midday, my ship had arrived at the shore of the main island. Everything was quiet on the beach, but as I ventured away from my ship, I could hear the faint sound of singing in the distance. Curious to know the origins of this sound, as this entire area was thought to be abandoned, I had investigated further. The island seemed to have no animal life at first, but as I neared the sound of the singing, I could hear the other sounds accompanying it. As I got to the sound of the singing, I saw this large fountain with a woman sitting atop, just singing to a field of animals as they were entranced by her voice. It was an enchanting sight. This was the first time I had seen a siren so captivating. The allure of her voice was almost enough to pull me in. Almost. As I approached, she seemed startled and stopped singing. The look in her eyes was filled with concern, not for herself, but for me? It's alright, I'm not here to hurt you or anything. I'm just a traveler, I tried to explain with my hands up as if I was approaching a cautious doe. She started shaking her head and swung her hands back and forth, gesturing for me to not come closer. I opened my bag and pulled out a small flower native to my land and held it out forward to her as an offering. She continued to gesture that I leave. Keeping my distance, I watched to see what this creature was. I've met many sirens before, and they tended to be very outgoing and got along with everyone. Perhaps they thought I was a human and wanted to poach them or defile them, as humans have always found a new way to taint the land they inhabit, even if it was just for a moment. That usually would make no sense, considering you could tell the radiating grace of an elf versus a human, but being isolated here, she may not have known any better, the poor thing. She looked so radiant there with the sunlight shining down on her, almost comparable to myself. She was definitely leagues above other high elves in appearance and her voice alone. I made a small fire using my magic and began preparing ingredients for my dinner. It was a really nice night, so I thought some soup may be a great meal. Diving my hand into my dimensional pocket, I pulled out flour and spring water to begin preparing dough for noodles. Over the fire was a large pot filled with different bones to make a broth. A few moments later, I added in thick slices of meat and cuts of vegetables. The scent of the soup was wafting through the air, which had seemed to have caught the attention of the siren, as she was slowly walking over with her nose twitching. Placing an extra bowl of soup on a stump across from me, I gestured to her that she could have it. Then I began to eat my dinner, as though I was showing her it was not poisoned. We sat in silence eating until I put my bowl down for a moment to speak. You sing very beautifully. It's a shame you are out here all by yourself, it seems, without the proper audience. She slurped her noodles, then burped before putting her bowl down. Still no response, just a look in my direction with sorrowful eyes. Contemplating for a moment, I began to chant a small spell and closed my eyes. I could feel her sitting there in front of me and attempted to tap into her mind. Be calm. I am using a spell to communicate telepathically, as you seem to not want to talk. I opened my eyes and nodded at her with a slight smile. What is this? You can hear my thoughts right now? Banana, 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 banana. She seemed to be having fun with this. Yes, I can hear you. Why is it that you do not speak aloud? You have a wonderful voice, and it should be shared with the world, I thought, trying to convince her to speak. Well, I am a siren, and we are known for luring people in with our voices. However, I was born a bit of an anomaly. It seems even my own people are affected by my voice, and as you saw earlier, even the animals. Sometimes everyone loves it and just claps along, but other times it drives them to madness. Even just having a conversation, she responded. I opened my mouth to speak and broke the telepathic bond. I was listening to you sing earlier and I was completely fine. None of the animals went crazy. Surely you can speak to me and nothing will happen. She hesitated for a moment and looked a bit concerned, but after giving it some thought, she realized that I would persist in this matter. Hello. Please do not hate me if you end up crazy. I warned you, and you accepted the risks, she said with slight worry. You have a beautiful voice, but alas, my mind is too strong, and you cannot break me. I feel nothing but admiration for you as an artist. I gave her a smug grin before picking up my bowl and finishing my soup. After spending some time on the island discussing the treasure I was looking for and having many conversations without the use of telepathy, we had grown to become friends. Do you actually like singing, or does it just pass the time? I asked her with a curious look. I love singing more than anything in the world. I loved singing for people when I was younger, but as my power grew, I had to move into isolation to avoid any accidents. She had a bittersweet look on her face as she reminisced on the days she sang for others. Hear me out. Come back with me. My people are very adept at magic and can help make a barrier that protects people from your voice while letting them enjoy the music. I want to share you with the world. As I finished my sentence, she looked down at her feet, then got up and walked away. Shortly after, she returned with a bag that looked stuffed to the brim, almost ready to explode. I will trust you. Just please don't let me hurt anyone. She spoke softly. Excitedly, I picked up my things and threw them into my pocket dimension. We headed towards my boat while chatting about the trip and what to expect. While we sailed, she was looking at me in awe at the scenery I described, and all of the stories I told her of the land that I was bringing her to. She wasn't surprised to hear that I was royalty based on my elegant aura. Finally, we docked at my home city and made our way to my castle. Venturing through the streets, she was captivated by all of the beautiful architecture, wanting to hear stories about each one and how they were built and what they stood for. Of course, out of pure concern for those around her, she would only whisper to me privately to ensure that no one heard her voice. Upon reaching the castle and seeking audience with the Grand Magus, we had begun working on ways that could get her voice contained so that people do not feel these effects of madness. Day after day, it was tiring work and potentially strenuous to have her sing on a daily basis for hours on end. But on the plus side, she was scarfing down all the food we had provided her to keep her energy levels up. About a week later, the Grand Magus had finally finished their research and crafted a device that would help contain the siren power from leaking through the song and infecting the minds of the people. Putting all of her trust in me and my people, we had hosted a concert for her to make her debut. The crowd was quite large and everyone was in shock that we were hosting a non-elven concert. So they were also somewhat curious to see who could have made such an impact that they would be permitted to use our kingdom's stage. Wisps of light began to dazzle around the stage, and everything went dark. The crowd all hushed and watched two small fairy lights swirl to the center of the stage, revealing our main performer. There she was, beautiful, elegant, and filled with a purity that could not be described. She opened her mouth and the words flowed across the audience, giving them a collective chill, followed by a wave of comfort. Her voice was so powerful yet soft, and each note was perfectly sung. At the end of the night, there was only cheering and roaring for an encore performance after she had already sung over well into the night. Approaching me with excitement, she grabbed my hands. That was the most amazing experience. I can't believe it. I'm able to sing again thanks to you. She put her hand over her necklace, which had been the tool crafted by our mages. You were amazing. I told you that you could trust me, I replied while taking her back to the castle where she had been staying. This went on for a few months. I took her to all of the Fae kingdoms, spreading her songs across the realm. She had gotten so famous that even the humans and dwarves wanted to get her booked in for their grand events. Surprisingly, even orcs were raging about wanting to have her perform. The Elven Council and Grand Magus had continued to perform maintenance checks on her necklace, ensuring that after each concert, the power was still intact. Every day they researched more and more to try and make it so one day she could sing freely and happily, or so we thought at the time. To calm the other nations, our kingdom decided to host a grand concert only for the royal families of each respective faction. The leaders of the orcs, humans, dwarves, even smaller goblin families, plus their private guards, were in their designated section. The crowd looked oddly beautiful seeing the garments of each culture out there displayed. One would never have thought the elves would host a concert that unifies these factions. Our beautiful siren stepped out onto the stage, and by now she had grown so accustomed to it, her stage presence was so alluring that it could be compared to that of a goddess. Each lyric danced off of her lips and resonated throughout the stadium. By the end of the night, the crowd was hollering and cheering. The after party was a grand feast where all of the guests had come together and drank while actually getting along. Some of the kingdoms even had a chance to work out minor trading deals and small unifications in their lands. If only we had known before. The next day, wandering through the halls in search of me, she had stumbled upon a room where the Grand Magus was speaking to the council members in private. The plan is in motion. We have adjusted her necklace to delay the effects. In fact, those foolish factions should be going mad just about any minute now. She had heard them say with laughter. The moment they finished their statement, she gasped in horror, and their laughter stopped. "Who is sneaking around? Show yourself!" The Grand Magus shouted through the door, while reaching his hand toward it using an invisible force to pull the siren through it to him. She looked terrified as he petted her hair and said sweetly, "Oh, my dear, what you heard just now was merely a joke. They were going mad that we have you here to perform every night, and they do not. That's all I meant. Go on back to your room now." As I entered my room, I saw on the bed a note with a small box. It was from her, explaining all that she had heard, and she was no fool to believe what the Magus said. She planned to flee the city and get a boat back to the Crystal Isles, where she belongs. She felt so comfortable and at ease, she had forgotten that evil does not lie only in the hearts of man, but all. They used her power to drive the other nations in disarray so they could ultimately take over. I clasped my hand over my mouth, and tears slowly started to well up in my eyes. Opening the box was a conch shell, with another note to it. "I truly enjoy the time we spent together, and I wish I could have stayed. This was the relic you had been searching for previously, and I have imbued it with a song just for you, as I know you can withstand its power." I listened to the conch every night, reminiscing on the fun that we had, and contemplated if I would ever see her again. The most beautiful siren that rivaled even that of the elves. Michelle.
Yeah. So, what do you think?
That was... the first thing that comes to my mind is accurate.
That was accurate.
That was nice. It was like, in the end, it was like, oh, like, I get to sing, but again, the folly of, I don't know, I can't say men because they're not humans, but, you know.
Well, yeah.
The folly of creatures that can experience greed, I guess.
Exactly.
Being used for political gains, what a nightmare. Of course. Of course
I would do this to you. Of course, it'd be my own people to do this to you.
Yes. I mean, and then it makes sense to go back to where I came from, basically, and just go back to singing on top of a fountain. So what was your favorite part of writing the story?
Well, my favorite part was kind of just making this character that, well, making both characters that kind of like expressed like very deep parts of ourselves. For one, elves and myself resonate very well because we're both the best things, and sirens and mashes are very intertwined because they can both sing and make people crazy. So
I make people crazy?
That. And then like
wait,
yeah, so I like the developing of the characters, so, like writing in general, thinking like, you know, what would be something that have an impact on her character in a realistic way, and it's like being used or having your gifts exploited by people after you have been taken in by them and all that stuff for so long. They've treated you so well. I feel like that twist was a really fun part to write.
Did you write that to hurt me specifically, or
did you write that just to hurt me? I wrote the whole thing to hurt you. No.
Well, you did it.
Oh, you did. I'm
I'm
bleeding.
hurt. I can't breathe.
It's okay. Maybe one day I'll visit you in the Crystal Isles again, or maybe one day you'll come here. We both live forever, basically. You're already centuries of years old, and
Yeah.
but yeah. I loved making you burp because that's just real.
Yeah, I was like, it's accurate.
That's real, and
then banana. I couldn't say it. What the f? Like, accurate.
you can hear me think banana.
I can't even do this recording now.
This whole recording is banana. Ooh. Yeah, so that was my favorite part of it, and I'm glad you enjoyed it.
No.
Yeah. I'm glad you witnessed it.
Oh God.
All right. So taking a look here at your story, your prompt is your prompt also the title?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Wait, but like, why have you done this? Did I say what my favorite part was?
You said your favorite part was how accurate it was.
Accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, let's move on.
Okay, so Michelle's story this week, her secret prompt was a conversation with the devil. Ooh. That's gonna be spicy. The story is also called A Conversation with the Devil. It was late at night. She had no way of knowing what time it was because nothing was working. Nothing within arm's reach anyway. Her alarm clock was off, her phone was dead, her computer was off, and the clock on the wall stopped working at 3. She didn't even consider leaving her bed to go check the rest of the house for the time. She also didn't want to leave her bed to plug her phone into the charger on her desk. Going to sleep wasn't an option either. She couldn't move, she was finding it hard to breathe, and she was too scared to even blink. She decided that all she could do was stare at it. Stare at the looming figure in the corner of her room, shrouded in darkness, that was also staring back at her. How long had it been there? She didn't know. How long had she been staring at it? Again, she didn't know. When did she fall asleep? When did she wake up? Did she wake up? Did she even sleep? These thoughts cycled in her head, not because she was looking for an answer, but because it was the only thing preventing her from falling asleep. She had to stay awake. She had no idea what would happen if she took her eyes off of it. She mused for a second to herself, wondering maybe it felt the same way. Just then, it started to move. Eyes still on her, it glided silently closer to the foot of her bed as it got closer. The looming shadow became larger and larger. It felt like it was about to encase her entire vision, but then it stopped. She could feel her body growing colder from her toes up to her torso and to the tips of her fingers. She couldn't tell if it was because of her own fear or if it was finally going to take whatever it came for. A while longer, she stared at it, and it stared at her, until she saw the shadow of a smile appear on its face. "Hello," it said. Her breathing stopped, and she couldn't respond. She wouldn't respond. She felt like she shouldn't. Still standing at the foot of her bed, completely encased in shadows, with a presence as intense as a stormy night, it asked, "What's your name?" Again, she refused to answer and just kept staring at it. The smile grew wider. "Aw, you poor thing. Am I that frightening?" it asked, seeming to have self-awareness. It leaned in closer to her, as if to see her better. With a voice Like the rumbling of thunder that shook her to her core, it said, "You're going to die if you keep doing that." Her pulse quickened, but her limbs still felt cold. Her body was screaming something at her, but she didn't know what. She couldn't run, it would catch her. She couldn't try to fight it, it would win. Suddenly, her vision started to darken, and she felt a searing, hot pain coming from her lungs. And she finally realized that she hadn't been breathing for a while. She sprang up from under her bedsheets, gasping in mouthfuls of air, and her lungs thanked her for it, flooding her with relief as she filled them with fresh air. "There you are," the voice rumbled. Since when had she been holding her breath? When she finally caught her breath, she noticed that she had left the safety of under her covers and was sitting upright in bed, looking down at her lap. She had taken her eyes off of it. She could still feel its presence next to her. Her blood ran cold, and she would have forgotten to breathe a second time if the rumbling voice didn't speak up again. "It's fine. You don't have to speak," it started. "You can just nod your head to answer my questions." What kind of questions could something like this have? What kind of cruel trap was this? She found herself wishing that if it had come to kill her, it would just hurry up and do it. "Are you the type of person that likes a good conversation?" it asked. The question took her by surprise, and without thinking, she nodded yes, giving it a sincere answer. "Oh, then we are similar," the voice said. "Next question. Are you afraid of me?" She nodded again, answering truthfully. "That's a shame. Then, before I go, will you look at me once?" it asked. She didn't move, and instead shut her eyes, her head still down. "If you look at me, I will leave right away, and you can pretend that this was all a nightmare," the voice tried again. Again, she didn't move, but this time, with curiosity hounding at the back of her mind, she spoke. "Who are you?" she asked. There was a slight pause before the answer came. "I think you know who I am," the voice responded. Her throat went dry as if it was telling her to shut up now. She had an inkling of who or what this thing was, but without response, she confirmed it for herself. What do you want?" she asked again. "Nothing," it said simply. How was she supposed to believe something like that? "Why are you here?" she asked more urgently. She felt as if she shouldn't be talking to it, but there was also something that intrigued her, that made her voice continue to leave her dry throat. "The wind brought me here. I had no intention of coming," he answered. "Why would the wind bring you here?" she asked with increasing suspicion. Another brief silence, then it was broken by a snicker. "That's a good question. The wind does as it pleases, and sometimes I like to follow it," he responded. The rotting feeling in the pit of her stomach began to dissipate at the surprisingly lax answer. "Then why isn't the wind here with you?" she asked. A resounding rumbling laughter broke the silence of the dark room, startling her. Before she could think, her eyes opened. The moon had decided to come out from behind the clouds and was shining through her bedroom window now. And next to her bedside was a man with glowing skin. He was dark, and there were patterns of light and color running all along him. Silvers and golds and pink and reds like an aurora. In the moonlight, she could see that he had a human face, ignoring the glowing skin. She noticed that he was sitting in her desk chair and wondered when he had taken it. Why? Would you feel more comfortable if the wind was here? He laughed. Was that a joke? If it was, it wasn't very funny. Sorry, he said when he noticed that she wasn't laughing. When I said that the wind brought me here, I meant it only as an expression. She stared at him for a second. All the fear she was feeling earlier completely gone. Why are you sitting in my chair? She asked. His deep red eyes widened a bit at her question, and it dawned on her how strange the question must seem in a situation like this. A mysterious glowing man with the presence of death itself showed up in her room at an ungodly time of night, and she wanted to know why he was sitting in her chair? Oh, how rude of me. I didn't mean to make myself comfortable without permission. He seemed genuinely embarrassed at his own impoliteness. She thought that, too, was bizarre. If he was worried about manners, he shouldn't have shown up at all and stared at her like that. As he started to stand, she stopped him, an exasperated hand on her forehead. No, it's fine. I think it was more rude of me to ask that question, she sighed. Thank you, he said, smiling and sitting back down. You're awfully polite for the... Even though she wasn't afraid anymore, she still felt uneasy about him. The devil? He finished her thoughts, smiling wider now. And even though she already knew what he was, saying it out loud made a chill run down her spine. Yeah, she responded, throat drying out again. Are you going to kill me? The words tumbled out of her mouth before even running through her brain as she stared at her lap again. There was no response, and she didn't dare to look up at him. Do you want to die? He finally asked. No, she protested more aggressively than she ever thought she would to the devil himself. Her head snapped up to look at him, and he smiled again. Then no, I won't kill you, he reassured her. The tension in her body disappeared. She lowered her shoulders and unclenched her jaw, not even trying to hide the look of relief on her face. Why do you humans always say that when you see me? It's almost as if it's some secret desire you all have, he asked, a bit of annoyance in his tone. Because that's your job, isn't it? She responded. To kill people? No, that's not my job. You do a well enough job of that on your own, he huffed. Don't you want to drag people down to hell? She persisted. My dear, if you end up in hell, it would not have been because of me, he sighed. Then what do you do that's evil? I don't know. What do you consider evil? She thought for a second at that one. Do you torture the souls of the dead for all eternity? She asked. He leaned back in the chair and crossed his legs. Is it written somewhere that I do? He responded. Written? Stumped again, she muttered. I don't know. Then, are you capable of doing good? She asked, regaining her composure. Anybody is capable of anything, he answered slowly, then continued. But when it comes down to it, the willingness to do something good or bad doesn't necessarily exist. The devil's words confused her. at which she wasn't surprised. "What do you mean?" she asked. "Well, whenever someone does something, it's usually for the benefit of themselves or the people they care about. Only after the decision is made do they consider whether it was good or bad," he explained, leaning forward with his elbow on his knee, propping up his head with his hand. "I disagree with that statement," she said. The devil raised an eyebrow. "Why is that?" he asked. "People tend to consider the risks and benefits of their decisions, and depending on the person, they will also consider if the decision is a morally right or wrong one," she explained. "Then, I guess the question becomes, how do you decide what is morally right or wrong?" he responded. She scrunched up her nose, and he continued, "How do people define their morals? If someone steals, is that morally wrong?" "Yes, that is wrong," she stated. "What if the alternative is to starve to death?" he asked. "Would it be morally right then?" He had stumped her again. Would it be morally right? Or would it be understandable? But it wouldn't matter if it was understandable, because they would still be punished. Almost as if reading her mind, he added, "If we consider letting someone die from starvation morally wrong, then wouldn't the people who tried to punish the thief also be morally wrong? And the sad part would be that they become morally wrong in an attempt to enforce what they think is morally right." Her head was spinning now. "I believe it's worth some thought, especially if you live in a society based on right and wrong," he said. "Whenever I talk to people from this world, right and wrong just seem like an illusion," he added, standing up, looking out the window. It was dawn, and the sun was rising. "Maybe right and wrong is a feeling that's defined by our own emotions," she said, absent-mindedly, staring out the window as well. The devil snickered. "Then the concept of right and wrong becomes infinitely more selfish, don't you think?" he said. "If I do something I feel is right, it is still possible for someone to perceive it as wrong." The room was silent, save for the sound of the ticking clock on the wall that started up again. "I have to leave now," he sighed. "I have one more question," she said as the sky turned different hues of red and orange. He turned to her with an eyebrow raised. "Are you looking for answers from conversations like this to explain away a guilty conscience?" She could see his shoulders tense up as he shifted his attention back through the window. Planted in place, he seemed to be mulling over that thought in his mind for a while, with nothing but the ticking of the clock to be heard. "Of course not," he finally said. "I am the devil, after all." Oh, that's sweet.
You liked it?
I did. I enjoy the idea of them conversing with the devil, just because, like, at first it's like, okay, what's going on? Am I having a sleep paralysis demon? No, I'm having the real whole ass devil.
Oh, no, that's literally say. Okay, cool.
Yeah, like, is this, nope, you are not a minion, you are the boss. Okay.
You're the main guy there, aren't you?
Yeah. So I love that. I love that about the whole story in general, that it gives off that vibe. And, you know, he's not wrong.
Of course he's not wrong, but then what do you define as wrong?
Everything. Everything
Everything
that a
is
human
wrong.
could possibly do is wrong.
Yeah, I like thinking about people's personal morals and stuff like that, and like what defines them, whether it be like your upbringing or your own beliefs that kind of shapes your morals. And then we look at things that are illegal and things that are legal in our actual society. And then for every law that's broken, there's a story. And whether or not the law was broken for a just cause or whatever it was, doesn't matter in the eyes of the law. So it's almost as if the laws are immoral. So it's like, I feel it's a common conversation, because it's kind of like there's so many times where somebody gets convicted for something completely stupid, but because it's written somewhere that they can't do that, right? And then they do it for a good reason, they're still going to get punished for, for following their own moral compass type of deal, right? So I don't know. I feel like morality is always a very interesting conversation to have, and to have it with the devil just makes it more interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Having any conversations like this with the devil, for sure, 100%. I'm just wondering a bit more on the morality aspect. So we have not just moral and immoral. We also have amoral and there's other types of morality. Amorality is indifference. When we have something that is moral, it's generally about goodness and what's right. And when we have immoral, it is the opposition to that. But then when we have amorality, that would be indifference toward a particular set of moral standards. I feel like morality has a lot of grays to it. I understand that in the story, it is, I wouldn't say black and white. It's a chain effect. It's an event of things, and it's all perspective. It's a lot.
Yeah, no, it is. And that's why I would say that morality depends on the person. It's I feel like in general, people agree on what's moral, but when it comes down to more gray areas, it's the question, it's the case of ethics too, right?
Yes,
that's ethics. It's what is morally right to people. People who study ethics or have a profession in ethics are there on the precipice deciding what's moral, what's immoral, what's right, what's wrong. And it's it depends. It boils down to your own values. And I feel now though, as a society, we all kind of have the same values, which is good, because then that means we can all easily make decisions and agree on things. But when you look at it more, it's in terms of the laws and stuff like that, and people getting convicted for things that you think is morally okay or morally right, that comes into question a lot. And I think it's worth, thinking about more often.
It definitely is worth thinking about. And I definitely want to extend the conversation to all of our viewers to, reach out to us on our contact page and let us know what you think. I know we've had questions like this in the past when we've talked about morality and things like that, and altruism and things like that. And I feel like it's, even if you don't message us about it, talk to your friends about it randomly, drive a thought-provoking conversation with them and just get their ideas and feels and stuff. But
yeah, it'd be good. It'd be cool. Yeah, and like I said, it's worth thinking about. It's worth talking about, just because we should all be on the same page. We should all consider things like this.
We should be in the same book. We don't have to be on the same page. I don't expect you all to be exactly like me.
Oh yeah, no. I mean,
we'll be in the same book.
Page. If we're talking about things that matter, decisions regarding court cases and stuff like that, then I feel like we should all generally be on the same page.
Exactly.
If you have any ideas or examples of moral situations like that you're on the fence about, send it to us. It'll be interesting. Food for thought type of deal.
But with that, let's get some prompts for next week and turn around so we don't get into a whole ethics course on these people.
On these people. Mess them up.
I have a prompt for you for next week. Okay. Okay. Oh my god. Yeah, exactly. That's the prompt. How did you know? This is also for our live, so make sure you're all ready. That is June 3rd. That will be episode 18. Yay! And it is a famous psychic loses their powers live on TV and has to cope with their destroyed career.
I love writing coping stories.
I love writing copious stories.
A copious amount of depression.
Exactly. Now what do you got for me, Evie?
Your prompt is: an evil, immortal king refuses to give up the throne.
Oh.
Yeah.
You know, I read a manga that's like not that, but
yeah.
but there is a manga called like Evil Immortal King. But it's not that.
It's not, okay. Yeah.
No, he doesn't give up the throne. Why would he?
Okay.
Why would he?
Yeah,
But
yeah. I leave that up to you, whether he ends up giving up the throne or not.
Excellent. Yeah, for Narnia. But yeah, so we hope you all had a great time listening. Don't forget, you could listen to us on Listen Notes, Podbean, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and we are currently in the works of getting approved for a Samsung podcast. So yeah.
Yeah.
We are.
What is
Becca.
I didn't know we were doing that. I didn't.
I know. Okay. Just go with it. Just go.
Okay. Okay, bye.
Hey, buddy.
Thanks for listening.
Almost as if reading her mind, he added.
Wait, hold on. What was that?
I have no idea.
Yeah, ghosts. Not for herself, but for me. I don't know why.
But for me?
Yeah, I was like...